The South Pole cow is what happens when a southern boy has a problem on his hands and a guitar in his hand. And that single sentence paints the picture of who Teddy Gentry, the mastermind behind this new breed, is to a T. Teddy is the founder and bass guitarist of the famed country band Alabama. You've definitely heard Teddy's music, and you've almost certainly had his steak on your plate at one point or another. Let's meet this legend of the stage and the pasture and the South Pole cow that came from this music legend. Teddy and the band broke onto the scene in the late 60s, and with his very first check from the studio, he bought back 60 acres of land that used to belong to his grandfather. He spent the next few years buying back the rest of that lost family land piece by piece. Originally, Teddy's family farm planted cotton, but when it was sold, the new owners scrapped the fields and focused on cattle instead. So the cows stayed, and Teddy continued on with them. While the band pursued their dominance on the charts, his grandfather moved back into the old farmhouse. Between gigs, Teddy learned all he could about raising cattle, and he made friends in the farming community in the area. But when his grandfather died at the age of 93, Teddy slowly started spending more and more time on his property, the place that held his heart just as much as the music did. Occasionally, they got together for a session and even released a few albums. But Teddy's main focus was on his cattle back on Bent Tree Farm. And Teddy was seeing some things that concerned him. There was just no way that smaller farmers were ever going to make ends meet with the gigantic breeds that they were keeping. The cost of feeding these massive animals just wasn't worth their less than average meat. They were also costing the farmers enormous losses due to disease and the fact that those huge bodies just didn't age well under all that weight. Simply put, if you didn't have an endless amount of land and hundreds of heads of cattle, well, there just wasn't any way the regular folks could even dream of getting their foot in the door. It's here that he was introduced to rotational grazing, and that was the final piece of the puzzle that Teddy needed. When he tried this new method, his herds suffered in the Alabama heat. They were just so big and sickly that he was going to start losing them to the sun if he didn't think of a solution soon. Teddy came to the conclusion that the southern states needed a heat-tolerant breed that was easier to manage than the big steers that were dominating the farmlands in the state. They needed something suitable for both big and small farmers. A cow that could be as cost-effective as possible while still giving off a tender cut. One that didn't drop dead with the slightest hint of hardship, and one that would cost less to raise. He settled on 4 main kinds of cattle to lay the genetic baseline for his new breed. The Herefords from England were chosen for their fertility and adaptability. The Senepol from the Caribbean were the ideal choice to handle hot environments, and they have very good musculature to add to their meat quality. Then came the Barzona. They brought to the table disease resistance, excellent foraging capabilities, and an unusually docile temperament. And to round it all off, the Red Angus was added as an all-around, easy-tempered breed with good calving and exceptional meat quality. In less than 10 years, Teddy created everything the South needed in a cow. It's nothing short of a miracle what he managed to achieve in such a short space of time. And the popularity of the South Pole speaks for itself. In the few years since they've come onto the scene, this new breed has sold just as well as Teddy's records. They've become one of the most sought-after breeds of cattle in the whole of the South. And they have the highest numbers on their home turf, the great state of Alabama. So let's have a look at what makes the South Pole so special and why they should have been on your property yesterday already. It's all about that red-brown slick coat. This particular color in any livestock animal is a good indicator of heat tolerance. It just absorbs the heat of the sun better, and the animal doesn't sweat quite as much as the brown or black breeds do, which greatly decreases their likelihood of dehydration in the field. This is an invaluable asset because they'll be out on the field all of their lives. South Poles were made for grazing. If they've got land for forage, you'll have a healthy herd that won't give you any complaints. Their slightly smaller size means that they'll eat less and you can keep more on smaller pastures. They are unusually docile, so much so that farmers that are getting close to retirement age are opting to switch over to South Poles for that easy handling. Cows will drop calves every year with very few complications, and their teats are well placed and without fur. They won't need any assistance from you to birth, feed, or raise their calves at all. They are unusually long-lived. Now we can expect smaller and more compact varieties of cattle to fare better in age than their gigantic counterparts. Almost every domesticated animal will follow this line. The bigger they are, the shorter their lifespans. But even so, the South Poles are the second longest-lived cattle breed in the world. A cow can easily see 20 years on your farm. It's still early days for this breed, and the statistics on them are going to take a few more years of observation to say for sure, but so far their foraging capabilities, low cost of care, calving and maintenance make them the lowest cost of cattle to raise per head in the US today. Bulls average anywhere between 1,000 and 1,200 pounds. Now that's a little more compact than your extra-large meat cattle, but they aren't exactly small either. The South Pole's size perfectly toes the line between commercial and small-scale farming, and they deliver such tender meat that those few pounds less per carcass are made up for by exceptional quality. Now we'd usually move over to some of the negative aspects of the breed we're covering around this leg of the video, but in all honesty, there aren't any to mention yet. Overall, Teddy's prized South Pole has just blown every expected standard out of the water. They've made it possible for small-scale operations to step into a large-scale market, and they've done it with so much ease that it's almost unbelievable. However, we can make some educated guesses for the future. Here's our take on what negatives might crop up eventually. They were bred to live in heat. Now, the South Poles have herds that see colder winters, and they've stood up against a little snow very well. They aren't as happy in these conditions since it limits their ability to forage, and they just don't like supplemental grain feed all that much. We foresee that they might struggle in the northern states, where snowfall gets deep and truly warm months are so much shorter. Then there are the obvious things to consider. They are open grazers, and you need to know what you're getting into when you keep them. A pen and grain feed in a trough just won't do. They need space and freedom to be financially worth your while. And as gentle as their natures are, this is still a large animal. Perfect for a new cattle owner, yes, but still more than 1,000 pounds of flesh to handle, tag, and herd. Spend some time with the cattle before getting them. The more time you spend with the old hands and the animals themselves, the easier your transition will be. And finally, with just 20 years under their hooves, it's very possible that there will still be some glitches that pop up in a calf every now and then. There haven't been reports of their trademark traits like docility and size veering off course. So it's completely feasible that you won't get any hiccups at all. It's just that breeds usually spend a few more years getting their genes streamlined than the South Pole did. Or maybe we're being pessimistic. We've never, in all of the breeds of livestock that this channel watches so closely, come across such a remarkable success story that unfolded in such a short time. But apparently, Teddy Gentry can breed a cow just as well as he can write a ditty and string a guitar. And if the Country Hall of Fame has anything to say about it, he's a pretty damn talented man, both on stage and in the pasture. Teddy and his South Poles are overhauling what it means to rear cattle. You don't need a few hundred acres and 1,000 heads of colossal steers with bad tempers to make a profit anymore. You can produce an excellent product for the absolute minimum of cost and effort. So we'd like to sign this off with a thank you to Teddy Gentry. He saw the average Joe struggling to make it into the market, and he set out to tackle the problem head on. His efforts and the fruits of his success speak of a smart and driven individual who puts the needs of his community before his own profits. But what do you think? Is the South Pole going to be the next top breed for the Americas? We definitely do. Or maybe you've kept them yourself. If that's the case, please let us know in the comments below. And like always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Every little bit really helps the channel. Until next time, just remember, there's no limit to what you can learn about your land and the animals that are working for you.